It's easy to think that pirates simply seized treasure ships and divided the gold, but the reality was far more complex. Capturing merchant ships was only half the battle in their quest for wealth. The real question is, how did they turn theft into profit? The answer lies in their business strategy. Pirates were smart about their targets, always looking for the biggest reward with the least risk. Spanish treasure ships were the ultimate prize, floating vaults packed with gold and silver from the Americas. Despite their wealth, these ships were often slow-moving and poorly defended, making them prime targets. One lucky capture could keep a pirate crew living large for months, maybe even years. Some legendary hauls included ships carrying over 40,000 gold doubloons, more than enough for every crew member to walk away rich. But treasure ships were rare, so merchant vessels became the bread and butter of pirate operations. These ships carried everything from basic supplies to luxury goods between colonies and Europe. What made them perfect targets? They usually had smaller crews, fewer weapons, and captains who were more interested in protecting their cargo than fighting to the death. For pirates, attacking merchant ships was like ordering the combo meal of crime. Relatively safe, filling, and you often got a bonus toy in the form of useful navigational charts. Coastal towns weren't safe either. Pirates would sometimes raid settlements along the Caribbean and American coastlines when pickings at sea were slim. These raids were quick, brutal, and effective. Grab what you can carry and disappear before any military response could arrive. Some towns were raided so many times that residents eventually abandoned them entirely. The way pirates attacked was a mix of psychology and practicality. Surprise was their favorite tactic. Many pirate ships would fly the flags of friendly nations until they got close enough to attack. Only at the last moment would they raise their infamous black flag, the signal that struck fear into merchant sailors everywhere. This flag alone was often enough to make ships surrender without a fight. If a target didn't immediately give up, pirates had other persuasive methods. They might fire a warning shot across the bow of a ship, a universal signal that meant surrender or we'll sink you. If that didn't work, they'd aim for the ship's masts or rudder, disabling it without destroying valuable cargo. What many history books don't mention is that about 70% of ships targeted by pirates surrendered without a single shot being fired. Why? Because pirates had carefully crafted a terrifying reputation. Stories about what happened to those who resisted spread quickly through shipping lanes. Most merchant captains weren't paid enough to die defending someone else's property. This reputation management was deliberate. Some pirates would put slow-burning fuses in their beards and hair before boarding ships, surrounding themselves with smoke to appear more demonic. Others would torture one or two resistant crew members in view of everyone else to encourage cooperation. These weren't just acts of cruelty, they were calculated business decisions designed to minimize resistance in future attacks. It was the world's most terrifying marketing campaign, and it worked so well that some pirates barely had to draw their swords for months at a time. But here's something that might surprise you. Many merchant sailors actually handed over their cargo willingly. Why? Because life as a sailor in the Navy or merchant fleet was brutal. Low pay, terrible food, harsh discipline, and dangerous working conditions made piracy seem like an attractive alternative. Some merchant crews would mutiny against their captains when pirates attacked, seeing it as their chance to escape. Pirates knew this and often invited captured sailors to join them. This wasn't just generosity, it was recruitment. More crew meant more ships could be captured, which meant more profit for everyone. It was the original pyramid scheme, except with cannons instead of sales pitches and rum instead of motivational speeches. The business of piracy had another unexpected angle. Sometimes it was completely legal. When countries were at war, which was most of the time in the 1600s and 1700s, governments would issue letters of marque to private ship captains, allowing them to attack enemy vessels. These privateers were essentially licensed pirates, doing exactly what regular pirates did, but with government permission. Many famous sea raiders started as privateers and just kept on pirating when the wars ended and their licenses expired. It was the historical equivalent of forgetting to cancel your free trial subscription, except instead of unexpected charges on your credit card, you got unexpected hangings. Of course, getting their hands on loot was only half the battle. While everyone imagines pirates were just after gold and jewels, the reality was far more practical. Hollywood has convinced us that pirate ships were floating treasure chests, overflowing with gold coins and jeweled crowns. In reality, most pirates went their entire careers without ever seeing a chest of gold doubloons. The average pirate was more likely to steal a barrel of flour than a bar of gold. Talk about a career disappointment. Sign up for adventure and treasure. End up as a glorified grocery thief with a fancy hat. Gold and silver were certainly the dream score. Spanish ships carrying precious metals from New World mines back to Europe represented the ultimate payday. One treasure galleon could yield more wealth than a decade of regular pirating. Records show that in the late 1600s, the average annual haul of precious metals from the Americas to Spain was worth about 2 million pounds, equivalent to roughly $500 million today. But these legendary treasure ships were rare and heavily guarded. Most pirates had to settle for more mundane, but still profitable, loot. Spices were among the most valuable commodities of the age. A small sack of nutmeg, cloves, or cinnamon could be worth a small fortune. During the height of the spice trade, nutmeg was worth more by weight than gold. One Dutch East India Company ship carrying spices could set up a pirate crew for months. These valuable seasonings were lightweight, easy to transport, and simple to sell in any port. Sugar was another prize target. Caribbean sugar plantations produced enormous wealth, and ships transporting raw or refined sugar were frequently attacked. A single large merchant vessel might carry 50 tons of sugar, worth approximately 20,000 pounds in the 1700s. The sweet cargo was easily sold throughout Europe, and the American colonies where demand consistently outpaced supply. Rum went hand in hand with sugar production. Made from fermented molasses, this popular spirit was both valuable cargo and a welcome addition to the pirates' own supplies. Merchant ships often carried hundreds of barrels of rum, each worth several months' wages for an ordinary sailor. Pirates weren't above sampling the merchandise either. Many reports describe pirate crews being too drunk to properly manage their newly captured ships. The only business model where quality control testing could lead to sailing in circles for 3 days or accidentally setting your own hat on fire. Fabrics and clothing represented another lucrative target. Fine silks from China, cotton from India, and wool from England were all valuable trade goods. One bolt of high-quality silk could be worth the equivalent of $5,000 today. Pirates who captured shipments of clothing had the added benefit of upgrading their own wardrobes, explaining why some pirates were known to dress in surprisingly fine attire despite their rough profession. Tobacco from the American colonies was a steady moneymaker. With smoking becoming increasingly popular throughout Europe, tobacco prices remained consistently high. A ship loaded with tobacco could yield profits comparable to other valuable commodities without the security risks associated with precious metals. In the early 1700s, the American colonies were exporting nearly 30 million pounds of tobacco annually, much of it passing through waters frequented by pirates. Weapons and ammunition were always in demand. Pirates who captured military supply ships gained both valuable merchandise and the means to upgrade their own fighting capabilities. A single bronze cannon could be worth the equivalent of $20,000 in today's money. Gunpowder, lead for bullets, and high-quality swords were all valuable, both for use and for resale. Medicine and surgical tools, while not the most obvious target, were surprisingly valuable. Ships carrying medical supplies often held rare compounds and instruments that were difficult to obtain. Quinine for treating malaria, various painkillers, and clean bandages were essential for keeping a pirate crew healthy and alive. Perhaps the most valuable prize of all was the ship itself. A well-built merchant vessel could be converted into a pirate ship or sold for enormous profit. Fast ships were particularly prized for obvious reasons. When the notorious pirate crew captured the merchantman Whydah in 1717, they kept the ship for themselves rather than sinking it because it was faster than their existing vessel. The ship itself was worth more than many of the cargoes it might carry. Slaves were, unfortunately, also targeted by pirates. Ships engaged in the transatlantic slave trade were attacked not for moral reasons, but for profit. These human captives would be sold in ports that participated in the slave trade. This dark aspect of piracy is often glossed over in popular culture, but was a grim reality of the era. Not everything pirates stole was valuable or even useful. Records show pirates sometimes ended up with bizarre cargoes they had no idea what to do with. One pirate crew reportedly captured a ship loaded with thousands of wigs bound for colonial America. while another seized a shipment of mathematical instruments and books that they quickly abandoned as worthless. A third discovered their prize ship was carrying nothing but religious texts, causing the captain to declare it the worst prize ever taken upon the seas. Imagine risking life and limb, battling rough seas and royal navies, only to end up with a hold full of sermon books. Even the most fearsome sea dogs had to admit that, we've been spiritually enriched, but financially ruined. After successfully capturing a valuable cargo, pirates faced a whole new set of challenges. Every successful pirate crew eventually faced the same dilemma: a ship packed with stolen goods, but nowhere legal to sell them. The solution? A sprawling underground economy designed specifically for those flying the black flag. Pirate-friendly ports dotted the Caribbean and Atlantic coastlines, offering safe harbors where no one questioned how you acquired your cargo. Nassau in the Bahamas stood as the undisputed capital of piracy during the early 1700s. At its peak, this lawless paradise hosted over 2,000 pirates and hundreds of pirate vessels. The town operated as a self-governing republic where stolen goods flowed freely through makeshift markets. Nassau's natural harbor provided excellent protection from naval attacks, while its shallow waters prevented large warships from getting close enough to threaten the pirate vessels. Tortuga, a small island off the coast of Haiti, earned its reputation as another pirate haven. French authorities initially attempted to maintain control, but eventually gave up trying to police the island. By 1660, Tortuga had become a fully functioning black market port, complete with taverns, brothels, and warehouses specifically designed for storing and selling stolen cargo. The island's economy ran almost entirely on pirated goods, with an estimated 800 pirates using it as their base of operations during its heyday. Port Royal in Jamaica once held the dubious honor of being called the wickedest city on earth. Before an earthquake sank much of it in 1692, this English colony openly welcomed pirates despite official policies against them. Merchants in Port Royal would purchase stolen goods at discount prices, then resell them through legitimate channels. The town's officials took generous bribes to look the other way, creating a bizarre situation where piracy was technically illegal but practically endorsed. Visitors described open-air markets where clearly stolen Spanish silver and Dutch fabrics changed hands in broad daylight. Not all pirate sales happened in lawless ports. Secret buyers existed in virtually every major coastal city from Boston to Lisbon. These shady merchants specialized in purchasing stolen goods with no questions asked. They typically operated under the guise of legitimate business, keeping their pirate connections carefully hidden. A respectable shop owner in Charleston might have a back room where pirates could discreetly sell their plunder after dark. These buyers typically paid only 20 to 30% of the goods' actual value, the price pirates paid for discretion. Corrupt officials represented another sales option. Harbor masters, customs agents, and colonial governors regularly accepted bribes to allow pirate ships to dock and sell their goods. Some went beyond merely turning a blind eye, actively helping pirates forge paperwork to make stolen cargo appear legitimate. Records from the 1720s reveal one colonial official who earned more from his pirate partnerships than from his government salary, approximately 5 times more. Smuggling networks connected pirates to inland markets where memories of a cargo's origin conveniently faded. These complex operations involve multiple handoffs between different merchants, each taking a cut while moving goods further from their stolen source. A crate of spices might change hands 5 or 6 times before reaching its final seller, effectively laundering its history. By the time those cinnamon sticks reached a spice shop in London, no one remembered or cared that they had begun their journey on a pirate ship. Some pirates played a longer game, establishing false identities as legitimate traders. After a successful period of piracy, they would quietly retire to a new location, using their ill-gotten wealth to establish themselves as respectable merchants. With new names and backstories, they could openly sell goods through normal channels. This transition from pirate to merchant wasn't as rare as you might think. Many successful pirates eventually retired into legitimate business using this method. The pirate life was dangerous and short. Becoming a respected merchant was the 18th century equivalent of a solid retirement plan. The most daring sales strategy involved dealing directly with governments. Nations at war often found themselves desperate for supplies that their enemies had blockaded. In these situations, even staunchly anti-piracy governments might secretly purchase goods from pirates while publicly denouncing them. During conflicts between England and Spain, English colonies frequently bought supplies from the very pirates they had official bounties on. One colonial governor reportedly signed a pirate's death warrant and purchased stolen goods from him on the same day. Occasionally, pirates simply kept the goods for themselves. Captured food, alcohol, clothing, and weapons could directly supply a pirate crew for months. Luxury items like jewelry and fine clothing were divided among the crew as part of their share. Why sell something when you could use it yourself? Many pirates became known for their flamboyant style, sporting silk shirts and gold earrings that had once belonged to wealthy merchants or aristocrats. Of course, successfully selling stolen cargo meant the most exciting moment in a pirate's life had arrived. Unlike the neat salary packages of today's jobs, pirate compensation came with no health insurance options, unless you count the crude wooden legs and hooks that served as the first prosthetic benefits package. What pirates did have, however, was a surprisingly democratic system for dividing their stolen treasures. Pirates operated under what historians now recognize as one of the earliest forms of profit sharing. Each crew member signed articles of agreement before joining, a binding contract that outlined exactly how loot would be distributed. These articles were often read aloud and signed by all crew members, including those who couldn't write and simply made their mark on the page. Breaking these articles could result in punishments ranging from reduced shares to being marooned on a deserted island with nothing but a bottle of rum for company. The selling price of stolen goods varied widely depending on what was stolen and where it was sold. Gold and silver typically fetched close to full market value since these precious metals could be melted down and were difficult to trace. A captured Spanish gold coin would be worth roughly the same as a legally acquired one. During the golden age of piracy, one gold doubloon was worth approximately 16 Spanish dollars, enough to pay an average sailor's wages for 2 months. More common goods sold at steep discounts. Rum and sugar might fetch only 40 to 50% of their market value since these items were readily available, and buyers took risks purchasing clearly stolen merchandise. A barrel of rum worth 10 pounds in legitimate trade might net a pirate crew only 4 or 5 pounds on the black market. This discount was essentially the laundering fee for converting stolen goods into spendable cash. Stolen ships represented the biggest potential payday if pirates could find buyers. A well-built merchant vessel might be worth 2,000 pounds or more, equivalent to what an average worker might earn in 20 years. However, selling a ship was complicated. Most pirates found it easier to keep particularly good ships for themselves and sell the cargo separately. Once the stolen goods were converted to cash, the money was distributed according to strict shares outlined in the ship's articles. This system varied between ships, but followed a common pattern. First came the off-the-top expenses, compensation for serious injuries, rewards for spotting valuable prey, and bonuses for exceptional bravery in battle. The remaining money was then divided into shares. The number of shares each crew member received depended on their rank and role. A typical breakdown might look like this. The captain received 5 or 6 shares, a significant premium over ordinary crew members, but nothing like the massive pay gaps seen in legitimate shipping. This relatively modest captain's share reflected the democratic nature of pirate ships, where leaders were elected and could be replaced if the crew became dissatisfied. The quartermaster, who handled discipline, food distribution, and representing the crew's interests, typically received 2 shares, reflecting their crucial role as second in command. Specialists like the ship's doctor, carpenter, gunner, and navigator usually received 1.5 to 2 shares, acknowledging their critical skills and training. Regular crew members each received 1 share, regardless of specific duties. Even the lowest deckhand on a pirate ship earned far more than their legitimate counterparts. While a merchant sailor might earn 3 pounds per month, a successful pirate could make 10 times that amount from a single rich prize. Young boys serving as cabin boys or apprentice sailors received half shares. Not a fortune, but substantially more than they would earn elsewhere. Injury compensation featured prominently in pirate articles, establishing one of history's earliest disability insurance systems. The exact amounts varied, but a typical scale would compensate the loss of a right arm at 600 pieces of 8 or 6 slaves. A left arm was worth 500 pieces of 8, reflecting the practical value of each limb. Eyes, legs, and fingers all had their established prices. This system meant injured pirates wouldn't be completely destitute. Cold comfort when you're learning to tie knots with your teeth. How much could an ordinary pirate expect to earn? Historical records give us some remarkable insights. When the pirate crew captured a richly laden merchant vessel in 1695, each ordinary crew member received goods and coins worth 94 pounds, equivalent to about 3 years' wages for a naval sailor. The seizure of a single East India Company ship in 1720 resulted in each pirate receiving shares worth over 1,000 pounds, more money than many legitimate sailors would see in a lifetime. Not all pirate ventures were so profitable. Many crews went months without capturing anything valuable. Others lost their loot to storms, naval patrols, or other pirates. The feast or famine nature of piracy meant that many pirates lived in a cycle of incredible wealth followed by desperate poverty. Of course, successfully selling stolen cargo didn't necessarily mean pirates kept their profits for long. For most pirates, wealth was a temporary condition. The average pirate could transform from penniless to wealthy and back to broke in less time than it took the Royal Navy to load their cannons. Their approach to money management could be summarized in 3 words: spend it fast. Financial advisors would have had better luck teaching navigation to a drunken parrot than convincing pirates to save for retirement. Taverns claimed the largest share of pirate wealth. Port Royal alone had over 70 drinking establishments in an area smaller than 5 city blocks, roughly 1 bar for every 30 residents. These establishments developed special relationships with pirate crews, sometimes extending credit during dry spells and collecting handsomely when the pirates returned with fresh loot. Gambling ranked second on the pirate spending list. Dice games, card games, and betting on everything from cockfights to who could drink the most rum without passing out consumed vast amounts of pirate silver. Many pirates who survived battles, storms, and hanging would ultimately lose their fortunes to nothing more dangerous than a pair of dice. It turns out calculating the odds of surviving a broadside cannon attack doesn't translate well to calculating the odds in a card game. Clothing might seem an odd priority, but pirates were notoriously fashion-conscious. After months at sea wearing the same tattered outfits, newly rich pirates often splurged on colorful silks, fancy hats, and expensive boots. This wasn't just vanity. Elaborate clothing served as a walking advertisement of success and status. Professional companionship claimed another significant portion of pirate wealth. Historical records from Port Royal indicate that some women in this profession became wealthy enough to own property and businesses, economic opportunities rarely available to women in the 1700s. Some smarter pirates invested their money, though they remained the minority. Land purchases, ships, or small businesses provided a path to legitimacy and long-term income. Several former pirates became plantation owners in the Caribbean or respectable merchants in colonial ports. The myth of buried treasure, while popular in fiction, rarely occurred in reality. Pirates almost never buried their wealth. Why hide money when you could spend it? X marks the spot appeared far more often in storybooks than it did on actual pirate maps, much to the disappointment of shovel-wielding treasure hunters for the next 300 years. The speed with which pirates cycled through their wealth contributed directly to the pirate economy. With money burning holes in their pockets and lives that could end at any moment, pirates created a constant flow of stolen goods into the market and coin back into circulation. This underground economy connected legitimate merchants, corrupt officials, and criminal enterprises in a complex web that stretched across the Atlantic world.